it's not the concern of mine. As long as you have a reason for yourself, that's the important thing. Um, but they may not feel like they want to talk. Uh, I will always be encouraging people to speak up because I think that it's important for us to share. But you're under no obligations to share. You don't really have to participate if you don't want to. I just want to make sure that everyone feels welcome to share. Sometimes we grow up in a world that everything that's not prohibited is mandatory, or vice versa. You I don't live in that kind of world. If it's always options. So whenever I say to you, hey, like, do you have anything to say, or hey, how about you? How do you feel about this? But I hope you don't feel it's twisting your arm. It's more or less trying to make you feel that your ideas are valued, because they are. This is the whole point of this discussion, really. The point of this discussion is to crowdsource ideas. I really think that all of us together are always going to be smarter than any one of us. So I like to give the opportunity for everyone who feels like they might want to contribute to do so. That said, it really flows right into our conversation today. And that conversation is about courage. Courage. In our society, we say anyway that we value courage. We often chide people for not having enough courage. But my observation is that we don't really support courage. We don't have, when I say support it, I mean that we don't have exercises that we do to develop courage. We just seem to expect that people automatically come with that wrapped in their DNA. And I have not found that to be the case. I found it to be the case that courage has to be developed if it exists at all in a human being. Maybe some people you can say, oh, they have natural courage or something. That seems to be a subjective call. It seems that we can say that, but I don't see the data to support that. So I'm going to lean on my own observations for this conversation and say that, you have to work at courage. And so I want to explore it, because you can't work at it really unless you know what it is or what you think it is. And so I want to explore today the idea of courage. I think it's useful to start, as always with any subject of depth, in agreeing on terms, or at least understanding what other people mean by the term. We don't have to agree that it has to mean the same thing for you as it means for me, but it's interesting to have an idea of what you think courage is. And I'll again remind people that if you don't want to say anything, that's fine. Put it in the chat or something like that, so I'll know that, hey, I don't want to be called on or something like that. And it's a bit tricky for me to like look to the side or something like that. But if you put it in the side, or just, you can private message me. You don't have to even put it out to the whole group. Under the thing that says everyone, if you click on that, you'll see a drop down and you'll find my name on it. And then you can say, hey, like, I don't have anything to say or something like that. And that's fine. I would hope that everybody would contribute, but like I say, there's no arm twisting. Okay, so let's start off. Is there anyone who feels like they have something that they would like, that how they would define courage? Anyone who would like to go first?
Lawrence?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe start off because I think it's easier if you go first. So I think courage is the ability to face and navigate difficult circumstances in your life, and to just get through it.
Mm.
And sometimes that takes courage, whether it's a difficult medical decision or an interpersonal relationship that's gone wrong. I think the ability to analyze it and deal with it and move on is courage.
Mhm. Well, let me try to draw out your meaning. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is something, evidence of courage. In other words, you say, look, if you have courage, you can do this or you will do that. But I'm not really so far, and maybe I missed something, but so far I'm not really getting how you define courage. What, yeah. Is there a way that you can help us to understand that?
I think it might start with a very individual upbringing, early experiences, to develop this through experiences, but it starts very early and has to be developed. I'm one of the first to speak up because I have been through a lot in my life.
Mhm.
And I learned being alone, and there was nobody to help
Mm.
at an age of 6 or 7 in running a household without running water and electricity and phone. And you're left. You do it, and you I devised ways, and I think it's built in you. It's one of those terms it's not concrete, so you can't pin it down because there's different ways that people achieve it.
Well, we're going
And
to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
pardon?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And in different ways. What a topic. Thank you. I'm kind of starting at the beginning, but yes, we all have those bumps in the road, but it's how we deal with them that makes us human.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else want to take a stab at defining courage?
I personally define it, good morning, everyone. I define it as you're able to do even though there's a fear or it's uncomfortable, there's a risk. Courage is the ability to act in the face of something that could be really, really icky and detrimental and all those kinds of things. That's what my definition is, having seen that all my life.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
Yes, Alphonse.
Mhm.
I unfortunately I was disconnected for a while there, so maybe someone's already said this, when we talk about courage, I'm assuming that we're talking about moral courage and not physical courage. And if we're talking,
I would say any kind of courage at the beginning, and we can parse it out later.
yeah, well, I don't like to spend a lot of time focusing on physical courage, but one that I know that I struggle with and that I've seen others struggle with is moral courage, where you are living true to your values or the morality that one is set up. And that's partly because a lot of us don't really have a good handle on what we truly believe are our values until we're put into situations. And then that's when we have to realize, do we have the convictions of our morals to be able to act with, in the presence of any kind of unpleasant or not welcoming environment.
Mhm. Okay,
So
kind of like what Naima was saying too, right? That you can act you can still do something even though you're scared. Is that what?
yeah, I'm like I said, I was disconnected there. But yeah, to me, the physical courage piece is one that a lot of people oftentimes are talking about when they talk about courage. But I'm more interested in focusing on the moral courage aspect.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else have a definition that they would like to share with us of what they think courage is?
I think it's kind of hard to define courage without saying a bunch of tired cliches about it. But I guess my best stab at it would be defining your own values as a person, which is a very difficult thing to do, something I struggle with, and just implementing those values every day and standing up for them.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so if something comes to you, just let us know that you're going back to defining courage, and then so we can kind of keep focus on what we're talking about. So it seems that if there is a line that goes through the examples and or definitions, people's definition, it is kind of that, kind of like what Naima was saying. It's the ability to go on and do what you need to do, even though it's scary. You know, if we look at, as Alphonse was talking about moral courage, it's like you do the right thing and you make the right decisions and you stand up for the right causes, even though you know there's probably going to be a price, and sometimes a very stiff price, for doing so. And I think, if I'm not, and correct me, Alphonse, if I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but if physical courage, if I understood Alphonse, was, you know, people like charging over the hill, you know, to take out the machine gun bunker or something like that. That's kind of doing the same thing, but in a physical sense. Would that be accurate, Alphonse?
Sorry, I'm here. I have it muted and then had to grab my iPad. Yeah,
No.
that's exactly what I'm referring to. It's like that which is internally true to you in the face of, regardless of the circumstances. It's true to you. And then the ability to take that step, whether it's in physical courage or in the moral areas.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could see many examples of courage, and examples help to define things, because then it becomes a little bit more clear what we're talking about. But getting to a definition so that we can all be kind of on the same page when we're talking about courage is often useful. The next question would be, what is courage useful for? And that is to say that we value courage, but clearly, if we have to have courage, meaning that there are consequences to pay for whatever act or whatever thing we're going to say or what we're going to do, someone else objects to our courage. Someone else, for what is courage for us, takes courage. The other person may have another term for it because it let's say, flies in the face or contradicts or challenges something that they want to do or believe. So I'd like to have some discussion on what is courage useful for? How do you use it? Or how would you use it? I'll just open it up. Anybody who wants to say something. Okay.
I will speak if I'm the next one. To me, the discovery of courage in myself has been a gradual process, and it has helped me to make important life decisions and a lot of other things. It's still evolving. I'm kind of elementary school age, perhaps, in development of my own courage. And it's not as if I've been terribly tried, but we all have to get this far in life. So I find it a very useful thing to remind myself of, and it is very internal. I see it as a stimulus to external, or a response to external stimuli, to take the courageous road, and practice strengthens it.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty. Anyone else have an idea of what is courage useful for? How do you use it?
I'm going to throw a little thing in the in the mix. At 72 years old, almost, I wake up every day with the understanding of what happened with the kids being bombed in the South and kids being hurt and pushed and whatnot, even to that young lady that was at the convention, and she was spit on and thrown around and pushed around at the Trump rally, or she was protesting. And there is a thing in me from the time when my mother told me that I could do anything in the world I wanted to do. And I said I didn't want to be an astronaut, thus queen of the universe. So it is something that is in me that has developed, and it's not a lack of fear, it's a knowing that the universe, God, is supporting me. And because people will ask me, how in the hell did you get to be on the city council in Elkton, South Dakota? People don't understand how that could be. How could I do that? Because it's not a biggie to me. It was a necessity. There was a need. Therefore, I participated. And so it's, for me, something that I just know that I have the support, and it's not support of family, community, or whatever. There is something in me. Maybe it's that still small voice, or don't cover your light up, you know, don't put a bushel over your light or whatever. I don't know what it is. So I understand what everyone's saying and the courage as far as physical and mental, but there's something in me and there's something in a lot of other people that I am aware of. You just do it because it's the right thing to do. Just like Alfonso's saying, it's the right thing to do. So therefore, you do it. And it's not about necessarily political gain or it's useful here. It's just the right thing to do. When you see a child running for the street, you run after that child. You grab that child. The mother might hit you because you can't do that. I don't care. I don't care. You do what you need to do. Physical, mental. I don't know. That's just the way that I feel. And I know many people. Betty says that she's a baby and she's not. I know many people that it's just innate. You're born with it. And most people are. Sometimes they want to act, sometimes they don't. That's my opinion anyway.
Okay. Interesting. Someone else, and what do you find courage useful for? When have you found it useful? No one else? Anyone else have courage? Ever used it before? Well, I'll talk about my use of courage. So I'm going to stick with the definition of being the ability to do something despite fear. I find that it's useful to me to attain long-term goals. Fear tends to be short-term and intermittent. You know, you have it and you may feel like you're always afraid, and there may be longer periods, but it tends to go and come as you focus or not focus on whatever is making you fearful, whatever is scaring you. So I find that the ability to look past that thing to the long-term goal, one, helps me to be courageous, but that's how I use that courage, that ability to look past a thing that's frightening me is useful in that way, because I know I have this sense that something bigger that's more important to me can be gained by the fact that I am dealing with my fear. And we'll talk next really about how we gain courage and maintain it. But I would say that's what it's useful for. It's useful to me to be able to attain long-term goals. For example, if I believe in freedom and I believe in equality and I believe in fairness, then my ability to just say, yeah, there are going to be people who disagree and will even attempt to bully me. But I'm going to just play past that. Someone will say, well, if you help this person, then you can't be my friend. Well, that's the cost of your friendship. That's how it will work. And that has happened, where people just say, well, if you're going to be friends with them, I'm not going to, I cannot be your friend. But I don't know how that came from. But to me, like those people their friendship counts less than my desire to do something. Boy, I don't even know how to turn this thing on. Hold on a second. I almost never have my cell phone. I was charging the battery, and this thing started to ring because I almost never use it. So what is that? But at any rate, I use the courage to attain long-term goals. And I recognize that there's going to be cost, but in my cost-benefit analysis, which I like to do on especially major decisions, then I feel like, okay, well, I'll have to go forward. And so it helps me to rationalize why I should do something, even though the cost may, at least in the present, be prohibitive. So that's how I find it useful, because now I can defer the gratification of just being calm to handling that long-term goal. So I would like to turn at this point to probably the most important part of this discussion, is attaining and maintaining courage. I don't find that there are many people who say, well, courage is not important, or you don't want to have that courage thing. You want to get rid of that. I haven't found people say that. Most people think courage is important. But we often find that through life, there are times when we have courage to do something and times when we lack courage to do something. Even when we know it should be done, even though it's like part of our ethos, it's part of the thing that we say to ourselves that these are the most important things to me. And you find that often where people will say, well, I believe in freedom, justice, and the American way. I say the pledge of the flag every time I get an opportunity, but we don't live that pledge. We don't have the courage to live that pledge. We don't have the courage to live that American way. And more important, we have some sense of who we are as individuals. And it's very easy to find, when we look close, that we have lacked the courage to live up to our own standards, let alone some external standard. Because finally, we have to have an internal guide. Even if we accept it from the outside, we have to be guided internally. So sometimes we lack the courage to stand up and support that internal motivation to do that right thing, or the thing that we think is right, to act on our own set of rules. So how do we get that courage to be able to stand up to that? What is it that we do that allows us to stand up and be our own person? Lee?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, because I think we can do it for others as well. And I'm giving that just through experiences. I deal a lot with people in their 20s, grandsons, just people in the community that age that are making big decisions in their life. And which college to go. If children growing up are not given responsibilities, they can't do it very well.
Do what?
And that's what's happened in our world. And I get this from my kids and grandchildren. They said, Mom, you were one tough woman. And I said, what do you mean? They said, Well, it was like you gave us the freedom to make decisions and just said, think about what the effects would be. And if you louse up and it happens and you're a failure, you're learning though. Don't ever give up. Aim for the stars. You can do it. But you do need to have what you said, Lawrence. You need to have a focus. You need to have reasons that you're doing it. Talking to a grandson. His parents want him to fly home from Florida to Milwaukee, and he doesn't want to go home for Thanksgiving. What would you do? And I said, well, what did you decide? I want to put it on him. And I said, when you get telling me, then I will give you my opinion. But my opinion is that you need to make that decision. How do you make it? Teaching him those skills. He wanted to go college there. His parents were so protective, they didn't want him to go far away. And I kept saying, you make that decision. What you want to be in life, make the decision. Use every resource you can think of. So what I'm saying, it is a slow process, but we can help others make those very, very tough decisions by just encouraging them. The encouragement of others. That is basically so important in life, because we definitely learn from experiences more than any other way. We do see models, but that's part of it. So this is a fantastic discussion, because I think this is lacking in many people. And I know I've developed to be a very forward person. I will talk to whoever it is, whether they're delivering or taking my garbage or what. They're not strangers, they're people. They all have lives. Lives are interesting. And I don't want to be an interrogator. I just really enjoy people. And I think it's a long process, and it's okay to fail. Done with my podium.
Yeah, that was very interesting and useful, Lee. If I'm hearing you right, I think you're really expressing kind of the core of it, and that is being able to take a risk and say, hey, look, I'm going to go forward with this thing, even though it's scary, knowing that there's going to be consequences. So, and as you say, that your experiences help to be able to do that, because you've experienced some fear before, and you've handled it. And if I'm understanding you, the practice of just going ahead with something you're afraid of, little by little, you get more ability to just say, oh, it's going to be a thing. I'll pay that. I'm going to go outside and it's raining and I could slip, but I'm going to go outside anyway because I want to go outside. Right? Yeah. So it's that experience of and cost benefit analysis, because I think something that Alphonse was kind of getting to before, we can just do things and not really consider the consequences. And so we don't feel the fear because we haven't really internalized what the real cost is. So in other words, if you think, well, I'm going to charge over this hill because the bullets are not going to kill me, then I don't know if that's really courage. That might be more like stupidity, because the bullets are going to kill you, you know? So, but if you say, look, I could get killed, the famous Sergeant York story, you know, I could get killed, but if I don't take out this machine gun bunker, a whole bunch of other people are going to get killed. Or if I don't stop all of these Nazis, then they're going to make a whole bunch of people miserable and kill millions of more people. So I have to go out and risk my life to kill this one guy. And even I don't believe in killing, because if I don't, it's, to me, could equate to killing a whole bunch of other people, because I'm going to allow this guy to do it where I could stop that person, right? So it's not that you're not scared. It's just like you did a cost benefit analysis and said, hey, this has to be done. You know, I have to get over that. So how do you get to that? And thank you for that, Lee, because I think that really kicked off this discussion. But anyone else, how do you go about attaining and or maintaining courage?
So I can jump in with a couple things, even though I missed about the first 20, 30 minutes of the whole discussion, so I apologize. But,
You missed the good part.
but just to say a couple of things that have come up while listening to you, Lee, and you, Lawrence, both talking. And I don't know if somebody's brought this up already, but Lawrence, when you said it's not that you're not scared, I mean, that's the thing I always think of about courage is there's the saying that is feel the fear and do it anyway. Having courage doesn't mean not being scared. It means, you know, acting in spite of your fear. So I try to think of that, but also when Lee was talking about encouragement, encouraging others, I sometimes think of trying to build up my courage in sort of the flip side of that, which is examples, looking at the examples of others who, in my opinion, have done courageous acts. And especially if there are people that I know, you know, it's easier to say, okay, well, if so-and-so can speak out about this topic, or if so-and-so can go through this difficult procedure, or, you know, whatever it might be, then I can use that example and perhaps I can do it too. And especially, like I said, if that person is accessible to me, I can say, well, that person managed it. I can probably manage it too. So that's just what sprung to my mind when I was listening to you.
Sure, sure. That's very useful. And I would say that if I'm understanding you right, it's like when you can place yourself behind the eyeballs and the experiences of someone else, place yourself in that position, that you can feel that, okay, I can do this, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very useful exercise to do, and to understand a little bit about how that part works. Is fear is really an autonomic response, you know, and it doesn't just happen in your head, it happens in your whole body. And often it's your body that tells your mind to be afraid. Your body is actually tensing up, vasoconstriction, or your veins and arteries are constricting, and all of those things happen first. And then your body responds to, your mind responds to that, saying, oh, there must be something here. Like this person weirds me out, you know. You're responding to something that is not necessarily a fear, but you're just responding. So in taking your approach, Jennifer, a person really is embodying that person who faced the fear, and then it gives your own autonomic responses a chance to adjust and calm down. And now you're better able to put your amygdala or all of those autonomic or automatic responses in check. And now your prefrontal cortex, sorry to be so technical, but the thinking part of your brain now can say, how will I handle this? You know, I need to do something. What's going to be my strategy to overcoming this obstacle? Okay, so in that patterning, you have a chance to sort of like play it out in your mind. What did they do? How would they handle it? What was the outcome of their efforts? Even if it went sour, what could I do better that it would, or different, that it might turn out better for me? You know, you have it by working out that pattern that you've seen another person face the same similar thing, you're able to adjust. Anyone else that has an approach to attaining or maintaining courage?
Okay, okay, this is Alphonse.
Hmm.
So I'm going back to something that you asked earlier there, Lawrence, and then responding to your current question. You know, I would walk into meetings in my professional life, and there would be some people who would greet me with, "Uh-oh, here comes trouble." And it took me a long time to finally come to something that was acceptable to me as to what did they really mean. And as I matured in my profession, I recognized it's like, if you ask the question that nobody should put on the table, then that's creating trouble. And I just couldn't stop, and I still won't stop. Now I'm responding to the current question. I still won't stop in asking the questions. And so it is the way in which I approach that which may have some level of discomfort for others in the room, or even for me, but it's a question that I need to ask so that I know how I am going to proceed forward. But just asking the question, even if it's in your head, but I did it publicly, in your head though, can be troubling for people. It's like, no, I'm not supposed to talk about that. And then the last part of what I'll say is this. My office used to be in our main campus library. And I used to talk to my librarian colleagues a lot. And I had learned from my students that they wouldn't talk to the librarians. And so I asked one of the librarians one day, I said, why is it that they won't ask you questions? Well, there's something that we have done to children, we have done to human beings in the US, that's all I can talk about right now, of discouraging raising questions. It's an unsafe thing to do, to ask the question, such that young people who are college age won't go up to librarians. And then my colleague actually said, really, it's not just university students, it's adults as well, older adults as well, that they won't ask the question. So that's how I am able to maintain the notion of going forward and doing things that others would dare not do. But I've also been called an iconoclast. I really have asked questions about things that I'm not supposed to be asking about, the way the world works. Why? Anyway, those are the two levels of response that I wanted to give. It has basically to do with the question.
Excellent, excellent. I will say about librarians that they're just scary. You know, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that little bun thing they put on the back of their heads or something like that. But there's something about, you know, for years, I had a hard time going into libraries. And it wasn't until I became an investigative reporter, and I had to go to libraries because that's where the data was. And that was an example of like overcoming fear. And I can actually remember the origination of my fear. And it was when the first time I went into a library, the librarian said, "What are you doing in here?" You know, it's like I had this sense like, well, I guess I'm not supposed to be in here, but my teacher sent me down to the school library, and that was what I was greeted with. And it took me a long time to get over the fact of the feeling that somehow I was trespassing on some territory that I wasn't supposed to be on, you know. But once I did, now I remember this one time when we had a state library, the librarian, I called one time and I talked to them and I ordered some books. And then later I realized, oh, I didn't even tell them who it was. And I called back and she said, oh, we know who you were, because whenever we get some weird question, we know that's Diggs. You know, so I use them all the time now, you know, to help me find obscure information. But it took that sort of like being pushed really, and I needed to do it. And so I had to like overcome that internal sense of you're not permitted in here. Even though I knew rationally that I was, that initial encounter had instilled in me the sense that I was trespassing and was doing something that was wrong. And it took me years to get over that. But now the library is my friend, and I like librarians, even though they're still scary. Anyone else have some ideas of how you overcome the fear with courage? How do you get and maintain courage?
I practice. I've come a long way from my early life of not feeling like you talk about not belonging in the library, situations just in everyday life. And I realize now that I was, in that way, I embodied my mother. But what I read a book several years ago, just the one, but I did read a book once. It was by Arianna Huffington, Becoming Fearless. And I couldn't even quote anything from it now, but that was part of my process. And then I started daring to speak my mind and daring to do the courageous thing. And practice has made it almost, now I'm almost not able to resist speaking up. There are times when I should still keep my peace for a while. I'm working on that. But that's what's worked for me. It gets stronger with use. And as Lee said, we can teach other people courage. And I actually have people say to me, like when I left this sort of secure job that was dead end for me and took off at a time that seemed inopportune for the people around me, and went in and did that. And one of my colleagues at that job said, oh, I just think that's so courageous of you. It had never occurred to me that this was an act of courage. It was an act of having looked at it, considered the consequences of not taking it, and deciding to go. And it was a very good choice. It wasn't easy, but anyway, practice, that really helps. But it's that feeling, that autonomic response that can come from so many things when you've kind of been raised to think you should be afraid of things. And so feeling that, and then pausing and breathing and deciding, oh, wait a minute now, why am I afraid of this? What is it about this that makes me feel sick to my stomach or something? And then, give yourself time to assume your rational thinking mode, if you still have one, and go ahead then and make a decision. So it's a lot of fun really now to be able to go to a Cracker Barrel, for instance, and have the courage to go to the podium and even ask the first question sometimes, not feel I have to wait until somebody, see if anybody else is going to bring it up or whatever. So that's my story for now.
Excellent. I think you made some really excellent points there, Betty. And especially, just doing it, the experience, doing it over and over again. And then like you did mention something about taking a deep breath. And I think that that's one of the tactics that we can use to attain the courage, at least on the spot, not so much that, and then that becomes a habit. And so one of the things that happens when the fear rises, which is the block that keeps you from acting on that which you believe you should act on, when that thing happens, when the autonomic nervous system kicks in, you'll start breathing shallow and rapidly, and your heartbeat will increase. And all of that is that fight or flight autonomic nervous system response. And when you learn to recognize that, hey, that's what's happening to me right now, then you can sort of take that deep breath and in the process, do that a few times. One time usually doesn't do it, but it's a start. And then once you do that, now if your heart rate can decrease, and then you go on and do that which you realize you needed to do, and then you do that over and over, and pretty soon you don't get, at least for that thing, you don't get that autonomic nervous system response anymore, because your brain knows, I can handle this, I've handled it before, but you have the practice. So that's a very good entree to, this is how I get there. And this is how I maintain it, because I keep experiencing it, if I'm getting it right.
I thought of one other point I meant to enter with this. Somewhere along the way, I was taught that anger and fear are very closely related. And I felt that my response to both anger and fear were much the same. I would get that, panic feeling, or just shut up feeling, or sometimes I would just start to cry, and that made me angrier, because I didn't have control over my emotions in a situation. So that's also been part of the learning thing and practicing responses to both fear and anger, because to me they're essentially the same, maybe. Just wanted to throw that out for consideration.
Yeah, it seems that they are very closely related. When people become afraid of something, then it often results in anger. And they tend to be very closely related in my experience. Anyone else have something that they would like to share with us about how they attain and maintain courage?
Can I say one more time?
Sure.
Maintaining courage now. There were two neighbors, nose to nose, ready to fight it out politically. Now, I've not told anybody about it, but somebody witnessed it the other day and said, "You were the lady." I went out of my house, I saw it. I got right between them with my hands like this, in a very slow manner, said, "Okay, let's cool down," and tried everything I could think to get them apart. And I said, no one's listening to you when you're angry. And you were just saying that fear. And some of you are fearful of the future. So they really, truly are, Betty, very similar. I think that was why I did it. I don't know. Maybe I was going back to doing that to 15-year-olds. But the results is they're now not only talking together, but they're kind of friendly. So now when I think about it, why in the world did you do that, woman? Anyway, having said that, they are definitely related, and it's how you say things, the questions you ask. That whoever brought that up it's really very essential. Speaking about why they feel they are, you're not preaching to anyone. You're getting input to understand, and that diffuses it a little bit more.
I love that. It's like you're going to run after that child no matter what, because it's the right thing to do. I I take issue though with librarians or other people in regards to sometimes, I don't know, it just, sometimes people just have this thing that they can, I don't know, sort of like the boss gets you upset and then you go home and you get the wife upset and the wife gets upset, the kids get upset, the kids kick the dog bites the cat pees all over. I don't know. It's just, some of that kind of stuff. And sometimes people just don't even know. You're talking, Lee, about the way you ask questions and whatnot. Some people think that it is appropriate. Look at me, Queen of the Universe. I don't have a problem if you don't have your pronouns and your whatever those other things are, but other people do, and they won't talk to you until you get your pronouns right and your verbiage. And sometimes people just don't even understand that they're doing what they are doing. And a lot of times I think there are a lot of us, well, like the other day, I really got cussed out because as an administrator on a group, somebody else made the decision and I was the one that got it. And I got to move out and don't come back and a few other things. Well, one of the other administrators wanted to kick that person off and whatnot. And I said, well, no, let me have a word. And I just said, what did I ever do? Why? Well, just, and somewhat similar to what Lee had, you move it to where it needs to be, because a lot of times that fear, like Betty's talking about, takes over and it grips you and you just never know. So I think that the other way of looking at courage, Lee and I know aren't the only people that have done these kinds of things. It's about just, we all do it. We all do it. We have the courage to keep ourselves in check, our emotions in check, and realizing that person might need to be overpowering with us because we're the only ones that are available, and understand and look forward at what it is that they're going through, and get rid of, I'm going to say it, ego, because it really doesn't do a lot of good sometimes, not unless you have to stand up to a bear or something. Well, then ego comes, you put your dukes up and everything. So good job, Lee.
And watch the bear bat your dukes back down.
Yeah.
But that's,
Or that cat comes to my rescue.
yeah, there you go. That happens too. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have some input as to how you get and keep courage?
I have a little something that just kind of came to mind when we were talking about this. I was reading a book about Michael Jordan, who obviously had a lot of courage because he accomplished a lot of things in his life. And one thing that he said that really stuck with me, and it sounds simple, but it's pretty profound if you really unpack it. And he said, don't worry about things that haven't even happened yet. And to me, that's so powerful because it feels like fear drives, like you guys were saying, fear drives so many things. It drives so many actions. And if you really think about what he says, and you just think about all of the things that you think might happen, well, don't worry about the things that haven't even happened yet. And I just really, I don't know, that just kind of struck me. I don't know what y'all might think of that, but.
Well, it sounds like it's another way of coping with fear. And it's similar to what I was saying about, how what Jennifer's comment was. And that is, you're able to, by putting it in the focus of like, okay, well, here's this thing didn't happen yet, or it may not happen or whatever. You're able to like get your brain to sort of calm down your autonomic nervous response. And in case that's not clear to people, it's like what I'm talking about is that internal part of your whole body that sort of responds to a perceived threat, something you think might be a threat. It could be the way somebody looks at you or the way they respond to you that makes your body respond by your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid or more rapid. And it tends to like seize up your brain so that everything except fight or flight, is kind of like off the table. Okay, so there are a lot of things that happen that the body automatically does in response to a perceived or believed threat. So it primes your body to respond physically. Okay, the problem is that worked in the jungle, but that same response happens even in a more civilized meaning more predictable. I don't know if that's really the case, but we believe it's more predictable in the sense that when we're not worried about bobcats jumping out off our roof of our house, and attacking us or something like that. So a lot of the threats that we would normally face and would have to be ready for just to survive, they don't exist. We have some new ones, but not nearly as many really as before. We have shoes, so we don't have to worry about stepping on snakes, but we have to worry, and even nails depending on your shoes. So now if you have this autonomic nervous response, what it does is it slowly kills you, and we call that stress. Okay, so it slowly kills you because it throws out all those hormones that prime you to do it. But now the body doesn't have a way to deal with those hormones because you're not fighting or flighting, but those hormones are still there. So it's an inappropriate response to stimuli, so those kind of things can make it difficult for you to overcome the fear because the body is prone to just run away or just hack it, just do whatever you need to do. You don't take a logical approach and step back, like Lee was saying, and say, hey, wait. We don't really have to fight here. This is not productive. The brain doesn't do that when you're in that fight or flight mode. So courage allows us to like overcome that fear and put the fear back in its place, calm down, and take a more reasonable approach. Even when there's still a threat, you're able to say, okay, look, how can I handle this? Do I go to the right or go to the left? Is this a case where I can just walk away from this person? Is this a case where I can say one thing? Is this a case where I use humor? Is this a case where I bring in another person to get between us? Where's Lee now that we need her? Is there a place for that? So that is interpreted really as courage because you go forward, you solve the problem, even though the perceived threat is still there, or the thing that is scary. Yeah. Someone else.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm realizing from our discussion, when we have the time to weigh out what could or could not happen, that's one condition. But I've been thinking about those moments when we have to act in an instant. And again, it's not about the physical courage that I'm talking about. I'm really talking about still in that moral sense of is that the test that we need to give ourselves is we will always respond, especially in the moment when there's something that truly is violating, say, the human condition. That's a question for me.
Okay. Well, I'll throw that out to other people. I have my own answer, but I'll let others. Well, since seeing that there are no others, I would say that gets back to practice. It gets back to if you are dealing with when you have some time or when you can make time, because sometimes it seems like you don't have the time, you have to respond right away, but often you don't. Often you can buy time. So I think the courage is being able to one, practice being able to confront like let's say someone says something that's out of pocket and they are the, supposedly the superior person in that room, like speaking truth to power, for example. If you practice that, then you have a baseline courage of like saying, hey, I'm not getting that, I'm not seeing how that helps everybody. Having a baseline of saying, well, here's my principle. And I come in on this principle that for example, in my own case, I have a baseline principle of how does this help the most people and do the most good for the most people the most often? That's my baseline litmus test. So I go back to that. And so since I have a moral baseline, I can go back and say, I'm not seeing how this works for everybody. And if they want to say, well, it doesn't have to work for everybody, just work for me, then my next question is, why should anybody else care about you then? So I have that baseline that I respond to, but then there's another part that says if I practice this all the time, then when there's something that's bigger, I can either buy time or recognize that I may have to offer a solution that later I decide that wasn't the best thing I said. I shouldn't have said that. And have the courage then to go back and say, I'm sorry I responded in that way. That wasn't the best way I could have responded, or that came out really wrong. At the time, it seemed right, but I owe you an apology because I said that or I did that, but I really should have done that. That's another kind of courage. The courage to expect that I'm not going to be perfect. I have never been perfect, and I don't ever expect to attain perfection. I expect that it's an ongoing thing. The courage to accept who I am and my flaws, and therefore accept other people's flaws. That's the way I kind of feel I've handled like those things that kind of pop up, knowing that I'm gonna 50-50 chance at least. That would be good. I use the baseball model. I know I'm not going to bat 1,000. If I bat 325, I'm doing good. Anybody else? Ideas for how you gain or maintain courage? Well, if nobody else has any ideas, I would like to thank you all for a interesting discussion. I think there are at least a few people here who have gained something because I saw some changes or some engagement with this topic. And I would like to encourage you to further look into it. But many of these topics that we bring up, it's not so much that what happens here in this hour and a half, it's what do you take with you? What does it cause you to reflect on later? In what kind of way can you use the things and the comments that people make to improve your life and the lives of those around you? Next week is Thursday will be Thanksgiving, but we will still be here, same time, same station. And Jace DeCory is going to be our guest. We're going to have a very interesting conversation about philosophies of Native Americans. And I think that it's a very good day to have that discussion because it will be an opportunity for us to not only ask questions and hear a perspective that we don't usually get too many opportunities, and many of us don't know how to create those opportunities to hear that those points of view. So I'm going to encourage you strongly to come back next week, because I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion. Did I miss anything? Right?
It might be kind of cool that, you know, some of the people that come, maybe you could help them have the courage to apologize for the beginning of what Thanksgiving was a start, and then all of the things that happened, Trail of Tears and whatnot. That would be really quite cool if someone had the courage to, at least to one person, apologize. I know I will. I'll be there.
Mhm. And bring a friend.
Yeah,
Lawrence?
he'll be home.
Lawrence,
Yes.
this is Jace.
Hmm.
I just want to say a few words. I hope that folks will show up next week. I know it is Thanksgiving, but for us Lakota people, we give thanks every day. So it is another day to us to have an opportunity to give thanks and to show our gratitude to what the Creator has given us. And so I just wanted to say, I'm always a big chicken to speak up on these discussions. And those of you that know me would think, you're not chicken, Jace. You're very courageous. You speak up and say your mind all the time. But I've not been always like that. When I was a freshman, sophomore in college, I was very frightened to go to college. Even though my parents had gone to college, it was a new experience for me, and I wasn't sure that I was even college material. I didn't have the courage to even want to go to college, because I had a high school guidance counselor that told me that I was not college material, and so why even apply for college? But I did do it on my own. He didn't help me, but I did it on my own with my mom's help. Anyway, when I went to school, everyone was taking speech class, and I was such a chicken. I said, but I'll take speech class too with you. And I took speech class. I registered for speech class for 3 times, 3 different occasions, and withdrew after the first. They have you get up and tell who your name is and who you are, and kind of an impromptu speech, little one. And I made it through that one, but I didn't go back. I dropped it 3 times. And so I found out at the school that I eventually transferred to, the University of North Dakota, you could take 2 different classes in place of the introduction to speech class. So that's what I did. I took 2 different classes to make sure I got the one prerequisite that, or the one I needed for my liberal arts. Anyway, I was such a big chicken, but I knew that I did things in a different way. You know, I found out a way to do it, but yet and to accomplish it. But look what happened. You know, the classes I took were, one was a linguistics class, it was an anthropology class, and the other one was a communications class. And so the 2 classes really spurred my interest further into anthropology. And that's the field that I ended up being in, anthropology and American Indian studies. And it really excited me, and it set me in a different direction. So sometimes when what will start with being afraid or fearful, if you do the research and you do the thinking about how you can do things differently, then sometimes there are good results that come of it. And then when I graduated from UND, my first job was teaching. So I had to be the individual that stands in front of the classroom and others listen to me. So all of those things, the initial courageous event, I think, to continue on with class and to continue in college. I thought for me, that was a courageous event, and it was a life-changing event. So sometimes it's nothing like the 4.5 tours that my husband spent in Vietnam, and and the time that he spent in his later years to stay alive with Agent Orange complications. That to me was courageous. So it was kind of hard for me to think about, what is being courageous. But I think I guess that's the example for me. So I just wanted to share that with you folks, and I hope I see you next week. I will be there. I hope you will be too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jason. Well, that kind of wraps up our exciting adventure for this week. I hope you will come back next week, and we'll see you same time, same station on the brand new show. Bye.
Bye, everybody.